The Unraveling Thread, Chapter 1, The Birthday Gift. The year I turned 63, my daughter Megan gave me the most unexpected gift. It wasn't wrapped in sparkling paper or tied with a fancy bow. It was a sleek, unassuming box containing a saliva collection kit. "Happy birthday, Mom," she'd chirped, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "It's a DNA kit. We can finally trace our ancestry, see where we truly come from." I chuckled, a little bewildered. My family history was a well-worn book in my mind. The Hudsons, good solid stock from Colorado, and my own parents, the Millers, tracing back to Irish immigrants who settled in New England. Nothing dramatic, nothing surprising, but Megan, always modern, always pushing boundaries, was convinced there were hidden stories in our genes. "Oh, sweetie," I'd said, "you know I'm not really into all that newfangled stuff. Our roots are right here. Just humor me, Mom," she'd insisted. Her smile irresistible. "It'll be fun. Think of it as an adventure." Reluctantly, I'd agreed. I followed the simple instructions, swabbed my cheek, sealed the vial, and sent it off. I promptly forgot about it, settling back into the comforting rhythm of my life in our quiet Denver suburb. My husband, Richard, a man of steadfast routines, and I were enjoying our retirement. Our son, David, 40 now, was a successful engineer, steady and reliable, and Megan, 38, a brilliant marketing executive in the city, was the vibrant, sparkling jewel in our family crown. She had always been the light, the effervescent one, full of life and laughter. She was very much like Richard, with his tall frame and keen intellect. But her bright, easygoing nature, I always believed, came from me. Weeks passed. Then an email arrived from the DNA company. "Your results are in." I clicked the link, more out of curiosity than genuine excitement. The screen glowed with colorful pie charts and percentages, detailing my ethnic background. As expected, a healthy chunk of Irish, some Scandinavian, a dash of German, all perfectly normal. Then I scrolled down to the family matches section. My immediate family was listed. Richard, my husband, showing a 50% match, as expected. David, our son, also a 50% match. And then Megan. My breath hitched. My eyes fixated on the number. Megan Hudson, 23% shared DNA. 23%. My mind reeled. That was too low. Far too low for a biological child. A child shares roughly 50% of their DNA with each parent. 23% meant cousin, or a half-niece, but not a daughter. My heart began to pound, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. No, this had to be a mistake, a glitch, a misread. This was Megan, my Megan, the girl I had carried for 9 months, the baby I had nursed, the child I had raised, loved, disciplined, celebrated. She was my daughter. She was. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. The room felt cold, the familiar furniture suddenly alien. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the meticulously manicured lawn, the orderly rows of houses. Everything seemed normal, utterly unchanged. But my world, my entire understanding of my life, had just tilted on its axis. When Richard came home, I met him at the door, the laptop still open on the kitchen counter. My face must have been pale, my eyes wide with terror. "Edith? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I whispered, pointing a trembling finger at the screen. "Much, much worse." He looked, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What's this? A DNA test? What's wrong with it?" "Megan," I choked out, unable to articulate the full horror. Megan's DNA. It says she's not my daughter. Richard scoffed, a nervous, dismissive sound. Nonsense. She's our daughter, always has been. Must be a mistake with this silly internet thing. But even as he spoke, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. And then, as he looked at the numbers, truly absorbed them, a cold dread began to settle on his face too. The ordinary silence of our home became a suffocating presence, filled with the horrifying unspoken question, if Megan wasn't my biological daughter, then whose was she? And where was my child? Chapter 2. The Cracks in the Foundation. The following days were a blur of disbelief and quiet desperation. Richard, initially dismissive, grew increasingly agitated. It's a scam, Edith, he'd insist, running a hand through his thinning hair. These online companies, they make mistakes all the time. But deep down, we both knew. The numbers didn't lie. 23%. It was a mathematical impossibility for a direct mother-daughter relationship. We called Megan. She was, as expected, initially amused, then increasingly skeptical. Mom, Dad, come on, this is ridiculous. Of course I'm your daughter. I look like you both. I have Dad's nose and your laugh, Mom. Megan, I said, my voice strained. Please, humor us. Take another test from a different company, just to rule it out. To her credit, she agreed, though with a roll of her eyes that reminded me so much of her youthful rebellion. While we waited for the second set of results, a chilling silence settled over our home. We avoided eye contact, avoided the unspoken question that hung heavy in the air. Richard became withdrawn, spending hours in his study, rereading old newspapers. I wandered through the house, touching Megan's baby pictures, her childhood drawings, her high school yearbook. Each artifact of her life with us, once so comforting, now felt like a cruel deception. The second set of results arrived. This time, there was no doubt. The numbers were even clearer, the genetic markers confirming the horrifying truth. Megan was biologically related to Richard, her father, but not to me, her mother. The foundation of my identity, of our family, cracked. Megan, when she received the news, was stunned. Her initial skepticism turned to confusion, then to a profound sense of disorientation. But who am I? She whispered over the phone, her voice small, lost. If you're not my mom, then who is? That question, simple yet devastating, echoed in my mind. If Megan wasn't mine, then whose baby had I carried, birthed, and loved for 38 years? And where was my biological daughter? The thought of a stranger, a woman my age, having raised my child unknowingly for decades, was a dizzying, terrifying concept. We spent hours on the phone with the DNA company's genetic counselors. They confirmed the possibility of a switched-at-birth scenario, however rare. They explained that in the 1960s, hospital protocols for identifying newborns were less stringent, relying heavily on ankle bracelets and handwritten tags. Mistakes, though uncommon, did happen. My mind raced back to the hospital, St. Therese. Luke's a large, busy place even then. I remembered the exhaustion, the pain, the overwhelming joy of holding my newborn daughter. Her tiny fingers wrapped around my own, her soft cry. Had that baby, my baby, been whisked away, replaced by another, equally innocent, but not my own? The thought was a physical ache in my chest. Richard, pragmatic even in his shock, suggested we contact the hospital. But St. Luke's, like many old institutions, had undergone multiple mergers, name changes. and digital transitions. Records from the 1960s were likely archived, if they existed at all. It felt like chasing a ghost. The conversation with our son, David, was equally difficult. He took the news with his usual stoicism, but I saw the pain in his eyes. "So Megan's my half-sister?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "And I have another sibling out there somewhere?" "Biologically, yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "But you will always be her brother, David, and she will always be your sister. And she will always be my daughter." It was a statement I had to keep repeating, like a mantra, to myself, to Richard, to Megan. My love for Megan hadn't changed. She was my heart, my everything. But a fundamental truth, a core part of my identity, had been ripped away. I was no longer the sole biological mother of my beloved daughter. And somewhere out there was a woman who was. And somewhere out there was my biological child. The unraveling had begun, and there was no turning back. Chapter 3: Echoes of the Past. The initial shock gradually gave way to a relentless, aching curiosity. If Megan wasn't my biological daughter, and Richard was indeed her biological father, then the scenario was clear. Two babies had been swapped at birth. My biological child, a daughter, was likely with Megan's biological mother and her husband. The DNA company offered a glimmer of hope. They had a close relative match for Megan, a second cousin on her biological mother's side. The cousin, a woman named Carol, lived in a small town in Wyoming. It was a thin thread, but it was a thread. My mind raced. Wyoming, a vast, rugged state, so different from our suburban Denver. Who were these people? What were they like? Had they also lived their lives in blissful ignorance? Had they also raised a child who wasn't biologically theirs? Contacting Carol was terrifying. We crafted a careful email, explaining the DNA results, the birth year, the hospital, omitting any accusatory tones, focusing purely on the search for answers. We waited, nerves frayed, for a reply. Days later, it came, short, cautious, but not outright dismissive. Carol confirmed she had a cousin, Linda Martin, who had given birth to a daughter in St. Luke's Hospital in Denver in the same week that Megan was born. A cold dread, mixed with a powerful surge of anticipation, washed over me. Linda Martin. The name sounded ordinary, real. My stomach clenched. This was it, the moment of truth. We arranged a phone call. Richard, Megan, and I sat around the kitchen table, the speakerphone on, our hearts pounding in unison. The phone rang, once, twice. Then a hesitant voice answered. "Hello? This is Linda Martin." Her voice was soft, slightly raspy, with a gentle, Midwestern cadence. "Linda," I began, my voice trembling. "My name is Edith Hudson, and this is my husband, Richard, and our daughter, Megan. We're calling because of some unexpected DNA results." I explained everything, carefully, concisely. The kits, the percentages, the switched at birth scenario. The silence on the other end was deafening. I heard a sharp intake of breath, a muffled gasp. "Switched?" Linda's voice was a shocked whisper. "My baby? What are you talking about?" I tried to be as gentle as possible, emphasizing the scientific certainty of the DNA tests. "Linda, our daughter, Megan, she's biologically Richard's, but not mine. And your cousin Carol confirmed that you had a baby girl born at St. Luke's the same week." Another long silence, then a choked sob. "My Sarah," she whispered. "My beautiful Sarah. My Sarah." The name struck me with a jolt. This was the baby I had unknowingly raised, the baby she had unknowingly lost. Linda, I continued, my voice softer now, filled with profound empathy. We believe your biological daughter is our Megan. And, if that's true, then our biological daughter was raised by you. Our son, Tommy, a wave of confusion. Tommy? My Tommy? He's a boy. Always has been. He's 38. He's definitely mine. There was a fierce protectiveness in her voice now, a raw edge. We understand that, Linda, Richard interjected gently. We have to explore every possibility. The DNA is unequivocal for Megan, and if she's biologically yours, then our child must be with you. The conversation continued for what felt like hours, a raw, emotional exchange of disbelief, fear, and a desperate search for understanding. Linda described her Tommy, a hard-working, gentle soul, very different from our vibrant Megan. She spoke of his birth, a difficult labor, and her only fleeting glimpse of him before he was whisked away. She expressed her absolute conviction that Tommy was hers, heart and soul. By the end of the call, no concrete answers had been reached, only a shared sense of profound disorientation. We agreed to a second, more thorough round of DNA tests for all involved: Linda, her husband Sam, and their son Tom, and we tentatively agreed to meet once the results were confirmed. The waiting was agonizing. The echoes of the past, of that fateful day in the hospital, haunted my waking hours and seeped into my dreams. I saw Megan, a baby in my arms, then another baby, a phantom child, slipping away into the unknown. The cracks in our family's foundation were widening, revealing the vast, terrifying chasm of uncertainty. Our lives, so neatly ordered, had been built on a decades-old mistake, and now the truth was slowly, painstakingly emerging, and no one, especially not me, knew how to piece it back together. Chapter 4. The Two Families. The second round of DNA tests confirmed the unthinkable. Megan was biologically the daughter of Linda and Sam Martin, and Tom Martin, Linda's son, was biologically the son of Edith and Richard Hudson. The swapped babies, confirmed. The unraveling was complete. The decision to meet was fraught with anxiety. Who would we be to each other? Strangers, bound by an unimaginable error. Richard, ever the pragmatist, handled the logistics. We would drive to Wyoming, meet in a neutral place first, a small diner, then perhaps at their home. The drive was silent, heavy with unspoken emotions. Megan, usually chatty, stared out the window, her face pale, lost in her own thoughts. David, our son, had opted not to come, stating he needed time to process. I understood. It was a lot. We pulled into the small town in Wyoming, a cluster of buildings dwarfed by the vast open plains. The diner was exactly as I had pictured it: worn booths, checkered floors, a faint smell of fried food. And then I saw them. A woman my age, with kind, tired eyes and a sturdy build. This was Linda. Beside her, a man with a gentle face and calloused hands, Sam, her husband, and next to him, a younger man with broad shoulders and a quiet demeanor, Tom, my biological son. My heart leaped, then sank. He looked nothing like David or Richard or me. He had Linda's fair hair and Sam's broad, honest face. But then, as he shifted, I saw a subtle tilt to his head, a certain way he held his hands when he was nervous that was undeniably Richard's. And his eyes, though a different color, held a depth I recognized from my own. Linda's gaze, raw with emotion, found Megan first. For a long moment, the two women simply stared at each other, a silent acknowledgement of the profound connection between them. Then, slowly, hesitantly, Linda extended her hand. Megan reached out, and their fingers met. It was an embrace, not of arms, but of shared history. "Megan," Linda whispered, her voice thick with tears. "My Sarah." Tears streamed down Megan's face. "Mom," she choked out, a raw, primal sound. Richard, pragmatic even now, was the first to speak. "Linda, Sam, thank you for meeting us." The conversation was stilted, awkward, filled with unspoken questions and underlying grief. Linda spoke of her difficult labor, the brief moment she saw her Sarah before the baby was taken away. She remembered feeling a strange detachment, a sense that something wasn't quite right, but dismissing it as the exhaustion of childbirth. I, in turn, described Megan's birth, swift and uncomplicated, my immediate bond with the baby I held. But the most difficult part was the dynamic between Tom and me. I looked at him, my biological son, a man I had never known, whose life I had missed. I wanted to reach out, to embrace him, to tell him everything, but his face was a closed book, his eyes wary, almost hostile. He barely looked at me, focusing his gaze on his parents, on the familiar. He was a mirror of Richard in some ways, but so clearly a product of Linda's world. His clothes were practical, his hands rough from manual labor. My David was an engineer, soft-handed and articulate. The contrast was stark, almost painful. "Tom," I began, my voice soft. I'm your biological mother," he flinched. "My mom is Linda," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, his eyes fixed on the tabletop. "She raised me. She's my mom." His rejection, though anticipated, was a sharp physical pain. He didn't want this truth. He didn't want me. Linda, sensing his distress, placed a hand on his arm. "Tommy, it's just information. It doesn't change anything." But it did. It changed everything. For all of us. Megan, however, was drawn to Linda like a moth to a flame. They talked, quietly at first, then more animatedly, discovering shared interests, similar expressions. It was a bizarre and beautiful unfolding of a connection denied for decades. The meeting ended after 2 hours, leaving us all emotionally drained. We had exchanged phone numbers, a tentative promise to stay in touch. We drove back to Denver in a stunned silence. The first step had been taken. 2 families, once separate worlds, had collided. And the consequences, the profound shifts in identity and belonging, were just beginning to unfold. The truth had set us free, but it had also left us adrift in a sea of questions, our identities shattered, our sense of belonging irrevocably altered. Chapter 5: The Weight of Absence. The first meeting left me with a profound, unsettling ache. Megan seemed to have found an unexpected connection with Linda, her biological mother. They exchanged texts, long phone calls, sharing details of their lives. It was beautiful, in a way, to witness this blossoming bond, but it also left a raw, open wound in my own heart. Megan, my daughter, was forming a new, primal connection with another woman. And what about me? Where did I fit in her life now? The most difficult part was Tom, my biological son. He had barely looked at me, his face a mask of disinterest, bordering on resentment. He had refused to engage, to acknowledge any connection. His loyalty to Linda, his upbringing, was absolute, and I understood it intellectually. But emotionally, it was devastating. To find your child after 63 years, only to be rejected so utterly, was a pain unlike any other. My steadfast Richard was struggling too. He saw Tom, his biological son, but also a stranger. He saw a life he hadn't shared, a child he hadn't raised. And he saw the pain in my eyes, the constant ache for a connection with Tom that seemed impossible. Our lives, once so settled, were now defined by a gaping hole. We were a family in crisis, navigating a labyrinth of new identities and shifting relationships. Megan, my daughter, was no longer just mine. Tom, my son, was a stranger. And Linda and Sam, once unknown, were now irrevocably linked to our story. I spent hours poring over old photo albums, searching for any hint of resemblance between Megan and me, between Tom and me. I found myself looking at Megan's features, trying to discern which parts were hers, which were Richard's, and which were Linda's. It was a disorienting, almost maddening exercise. My beautiful daughter, my pride and joy, was not biologically part of me. The love was still there, fierce and unwavering, but the biological bond, the one I had always taken for granted, was severed. The weight of absence pressed down on me. The absence of my biological child, a child I had never known, whose life I had missed, and the painful absence of acceptance from Tom, the son who had been unknowingly stolen from me. I tried to reach out to Tom again, a few times through texts to Linda. Cautious, hesitant messages. Just wondering how you are, Tom. Thinking of you. Never a reply. Never an acknowledgement. The silence was deafening. Linda, however, was always kind, always understanding. She would offer updates on Tom, on her life, always careful not to push. He's a private boy, Edith, and this is a lot for him. He's loyal to us. That's all he knows. I knew, but it didn't lessen the pain. The grief was profound, a mourning for a life that should have been, for a connection that might never be. My identity as mother felt fractured, split between the daughter I had raised and the son I had unknowingly lost. It was a constant internal battle, a wrestling match between love, loss, and the relentless demands of a truth that refused to be ignored. Chapter 6: The Unspoken Bond. Weeks turned into months, and the initial raw shock of discovery began to settle into a new, uncomfortable normal. The two families, ours and the Martins, existed in parallel universes, connected by a fragile, almost invisible thread of shared DNA and a profound, shared tragedy. Megan continued to build her relationship with Linda. They would talk for hours on the phone, sharing stories, laughter, and a sense of growing familiarity. Megan would tell me about Linda's simple life, her love for gardening, her quiet strength, and Linda, in turn, would express her overwhelming gratitude for the beautiful, intelligent daughter I had raised. This unspoken bond, though it brought me a strange comfort, also highlighted the chasm between Tom and me. Tom remained distant. He occasionally answered a direct question from Linda about his life, if she asked it while I was on the phone. But he never initiated contact. He never acknowledged me. My attempts to reach out were met with silence. The silence felt like a brick wall, solid and unyielding. It was as if accepting me would somehow betray Linda, the woman he had always known as his mother. I found myself watching old home videos of Megan, searching for clues, for hints of the woman who wasn't biologically mine. Her infectious laugh, her dramatic flair, her fierce independence, these were traits I had always attributed to her upbringing, to our influence. Now I saw them through a different lens, wondering how much was nurture and how much was nature, inherited from Linda. The love was unchanged, but the understanding of her, of myself, was irrevocably altered. Richard, pragmatic as ever, grappled with the implications of having a biological son he didn't know. He would sometimes look at photos of Tom that Linda sent, a thoughtful, almost wistful expression on his face. "He's a good man, Edith," he'd say. "Solid. He reminds me a bit of my own father, actually." It was a tentative step towards acknowledging the connection, but still so far from true acceptance. My relationship with David, our other son, deepened in unexpected ways. He was the one who had always been the quiet, observant one. He listened patiently as I talked, as I cried, as I grappled with the enormity of it all. He was my anchor, the unwavering proof of our shared biology, and a quiet comfort in the storm. "Mom," he said one evening, "it doesn't change anything. Megan is our sister. You're our mom. Biology is just a part of the story, not the whole book." His words were a balm to my soul. He understood. He saw beyond the genetic markers to the decades of love, of shared life, a family built on something far stronger than blood. The identity crisis, though, remained. Who was I? Was I Megan's mother, truly? Or was I just the woman who had raised her? And what about Tom? Was I a biological mother to a stranger? The questions swirled, relentless, demanding answers I didn't have. One day, Megan called, her voice more serious than usual. "Mom," she said, "Linda's having some financial trouble. Nothing major, but they've had a few unexpected expenses. And Tom, he's working 2 jobs to help out. He's so loyal." My heart ached. My biological son, struggling. My daughter, feeling a burgeoning responsibility for her biological mother. It was a complex web of emotions. "Is there anything we can do?" I asked, surprising myself with the offer. "I've sent her some money, Mom," Megan said. "Just a small amount to help. I feel like I need to. She's my mom." I swallowed. The raw truth of that statement. My daughter. Her other mother. The boundaries were blurring. The definitions shifting. Creating a new, messy, but undeniably real family structure. The unspoken bond between Megan and Linda was growing stronger. And though it brought a sting of complex emotions, I couldn't deny the genuine love I heard in Megan's voice. This was a new chapter, unwritten, terrifying, and profoundly human. Chapter 7. The Unsent Letter. The complex dynamics of our newly expanded family continued to unfold. Megan and Linda's relationship blossomed, evolving into a tender, supportive bond. Megan, ever the pragmatist, helped Linda navigate small financial challenges, offering advice and discreet assistance. They shared a quiet understanding, a connection forged not just by biology, but by the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. Linda, in turn, showered Megan with simple, heartfelt affection, a warmth that Megan, for all her urban sophistication, clearly cherished. My own relationship with Tom remained a barren landscape. He was a shadow, a distant presence, a reminder of the child I had lost and the connection I yearned for. My attempts to initiate contact, however gentle, were met with an impenetrable wall of silence. I understood his fierce loyalty to Linda, the woman who had raised him, loved him, shaped his world. But the absence of any acknowledgement from him, any hint of curiosity, was a constant, aching pain. I began to write him letters, long, rambling narratives, pouring out my heart. I wrote about the joy of my pregnancy, the wonder of holding a newborn, the dreams I had for my child. I wrote about the painful truth of the DNA results, the shock, the disbelief. I wrote about the kind of mother I had tried to be for Megan, and the kind of mother I longed to be for him. I told him I wanted nothing from him, no obligation, no claim, only the chance for him to know the woman who carried him, who loved him from the very first moment. I filled pages with words, then stuffed them into envelopes, never sending them. They became a silent testament to my unexpressed longing, a tangible representation of the unspoken truth. Richard, my anchor, continued to grapple with the implications. He would sometimes talk about Tom, about his honest nature, his strong work ethic. "He's a good man, Edith," he'd say, a touch of pride in his voice. Linda and Sam did a fine job with him. It was a cautious acknowledgement, a slow acceptance of a son he never knew he had. My identity crisis, though less raw, continued to linger. Was I still Megan's mother in the purest sense? The bond of 38 years of nurturing, loving, and guiding felt stronger than any biological link. But the knowledge that another woman had brought her into the world, that another woman was her birth mother, was a complex reality to reconcile. It was a constant dance between the profound love I felt for Megan and the intellectual understanding of a shared, yet separate, lineage. One blustery autumn day, Linda called. Her voice, usually so calm, was laced with concern. "Edith," she said, he's had a rough patch. Lost his job. His truck broke down. He's struggling, and he won't let us help much." My heart ached for him, my son, struggling. "I want to help," I said, without hesitation. "Can we? Richard and I? Can we send him something?" Linda hesitated. "He's so proud, Edith. He won't take charity, not from anyone, especially not from you." The unspoken, his biological mother, hung in the air. "Then let it be from me, as a stranger," I said, a sudden resolve in my voice. "Alone, perhaps? Anonymous? Whatever it takes. I want to help him." Linda was silent for a moment. "I appreciate it, Edith. Truly. Let me talk to him, see if there's a way. But I can't promise anything." The conversation hung in the air, a testament to the delicate tightrope we walked. I wanted to help my son, but he refused my existence. It was an excruciating irony. I remembered the unsent letters, tucked away in my nightstand drawer. I pulled one out, the words blurring through my tears, my plea for connection, for understanding. It felt futile, yet essential. The knowledge of his struggles intensified my yearning. To be a mother, truly, meant to be there, to offer comfort, to protect. And I couldn't. Not for him. Not yet. The weight of his absence and the pain of his rejection pressed down on me, a constant reminder of the life that should have been. Chapter 8. The Unbreakable Thread. Winter settled over Colorado and Wyoming, mirroring the lingering chill between Tom and me. My attempts to offer financial help, always through Linda, were gently but firmly rebuffed by Tom. He was too proud, too fiercely independent, too deeply rooted in his life with Linda and Sam to accept anything that might destabilize his reality. The unsent letters continued to accumulate. They were my silent conversations with him, a way to process my grief and longing. I wrote about the trivialities of my day, about Richard's latest projects, about Megan's triumphs, and I wrote about my hopes for him, my quiet wishes that he would find peace and success. Each word was a step in a long, arduous journey of acceptance of his rejection, and acceptance of my new, complex identity. Megan, meanwhile, flourished in her newfound connection with Linda. She visited Wyoming often, sharing holidays, helping with small projects around their modest home. She'd send me photos, Megan laughing with Linda as they baked pies, Megan helping Sam fix a fence. These images were a bittersweet balm. My daughter was finding a deeper part of herself, a connection to her biological roots, and she was thriving. And in seeing her happiness, I found a measure of peace, even amidst my own lingering pain. One quiet afternoon, Linda called. Her voice was hesitant. "Edith," she began. "Tom, he's been thinking a lot, and he's been watching Megan with me. He sees how much it means. And he knows you've been through a lot too." My heart leaped. Had the wall finally begun to crack? He's asked if you would visit. Not for long. Just to talk. He says he wants to hear it from you. Your story. Without Megan there. Just you. And me, if you want me to be there. Tears welled in my eyes. It wasn't an invitation to a full reunion. Not a promise of a son's embrace. But it was an opening. A chink in the armor. A desperate, hopeful chance. Richard, my steadfast partner, drove me to Wyoming a week later. The snow-covered landscape felt vast and silent, mirroring the weight of the moment. We met Linda and Tom at their small, cozy home, filled with the warmth of a wood-burning stove and the comforting smell of home cooking. Tom was there. He stood awkwardly by the fireplace, his hands thrust into his pockets. He still wouldn't meet my gaze directly, but his posture was less rigid, less hostile than before. "Tom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. He nodded, a curt, almost imperceptible movement. Linda, ever the gentle mediator, stepped forward. "Tom, Edith has something she wants to say to you, and she's not asking for anything, son. Just for you to listen." I took a deep breath, clutching my hands together. "Tom," I began, my voice clear and steady. "I know this is hard for you. I know you love Linda and Sam, and I want you to know. I have no intention of taking you away from them. They are your parents. They raised you. They loved you. That's an unbreakable bond." He flinched slightly, but he didn't look away. He was listening. "But I carried you for 9 months. I gave birth to you. And when they handed me a baby, I loved her with all my heart. That was Megan, and she was my world. But now I know. That baby, my biological child, was you. And I want you to know that I loved you too. From the moment I felt you inside me. And I've grieved for the life I never got to share with you. I just want you to know who I am. And that I'm part of your story, just as you are part of mine." I paused, tears stinging my eyes. "I don't expect anything from you, Tom. No obligation. No changed loyalty. Just understanding, and maybe a quiet acknowledgement that we exist for each other." Tom's face remained impassive for a long moment. He looked at Linda, then at me, then at his hands. The silence stretched, filled with the weight of unspoken decades. Then he raised his head. His eyes, though still guarded, met mine. and I saw something flicker there. Not anger, not rejection, but a profound sadness, a deep, weary acknowledgement. "It's a lot," he said, his voice rough, but devoid of its usual defensive edge. I just don't know what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything, son," Linda said softly, her hand on his arm. "Just know it, and know that Edith and Richard cared for our Megan beautifully, and they loved her." Tom looked at Linda, then back at me. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, I hear you." It wasn't the dramatic embrace I might have once dreamed of. It wasn't a sudden, tearful reunion. But it was an acceptance. A quiet, honest acknowledgement of a shared, complicated truth. The brick wall hadn't crumbled, but a small, narrow gate had been opened. Chapter 9, The Tapestry of Belonging. The visit to Wyoming, however brief and emotionally charged, marked a significant turning point. Tom's quiet acknowledgement, "Okay, I hear you," echoed in my mind long after we returned to Denver. It wasn't a full embrace, not a reconciliation in the traditional sense, but it was a crucial step towards acceptance. The unyielding wall had softened, allowing a thin, almost invisible thread of connection to form. We were two constellations, now linked by a singular, profound cosmic event. The switching of two babies, decades ago. Megan continued to thrive in her relationship with Linda. Their bond, forged in the crucible of this extraordinary truth, deepened with each passing month. Megan, always practical, became Linda's unofficial financial advisor, helping her navigate paperwork and make sound decisions. Linda, in turn, offered Megan a gentle, unwavering maternal love, a different kind of nurturing than I had provided, but equally profound. Megan often spoke of the quiet comfort she found in Linda's simple, grounded life, a stark contrast to her own high-octane professional world. For me, the struggle for identity continued, but it evolved. The initial pain of not being Megan's biological mother had not vanished, but it was overlaid with a deep, abiding gratitude. I had been given the immense privilege of raising a remarkable young woman, of shaping her life, of receiving her fierce love. My bond with Megan was not diminished by biology. It was a testament to the power of nurture, of shared experience, of a love that transcended DNA. Tom, my biological son, remained cautious. We exchanged occasional, brief messages through Linda. His responses were always short, factual, never overtly emotional. But they were responses. He didn't avoid me anymore. He acknowledged my existence. Sometimes, Linda would send a photo of Tom, perhaps working on his truck, or standing proudly next to a finished woodworking project. I would look at his face, searching for faint resemblances to Richard, to my own parents, to a younger me, and I would find them, subtle nuances in his smile, a certain way he held his head. These glimpses, however fleeting, were a quiet comfort, a small window into the life of the son I never knew. Richard, my steadfast husband, found his own way to connect, He sent Tom a new set of tools one Christmas. A practical gift, no words, just a return address. Tom sent a terse thanks through Linda. It was a language of men, unspoken but understood. Richard, always the silent observer, slowly came to terms with the reality of having a biological son he hadn't raised. He found a quiet pride in Tom's resilience and work ethic. The question of why the babies were switched remained largely unanswered. Hospital records from that era were fragmented, and the personnel long gone. We accepted that some questions might never have answers. The truth in this case was not a clear-cut explanation, but a complex, unfolding narrative. Life had thrown a wrench into my perfectly ordered world, forcing me to confront fundamental questions of identity, belonging, and the nature of love. I had lost the simple, uncomplicated truth of my family history. But in its place, I had gained something far richer and more profound. I had gained 2 daughters, Megan, whom I raised and loved fiercely, and Linda's biological daughter, whose well-being I now cared deeply about. And I had gained 2 sons, David, my unwavering anchor, and Tom, a quiet, distant presence who was slowly, tentatively becoming part of my story. The journey was far from over. There would be more adjustments, more unspoken nuances, more complexities to navigate. But I no longer felt adrift. The unraveling thread of my identity had been rewoven, not into the simple, singular strand I once knew, but into a vibrant, multi-layered tapestry. Richer and more resilient for its intricate and unexpected connections. The pain of the past remained, a permanent scar, but it was now overshadowed by a profound sense of acceptance, a quiet hope, and the unwavering conviction that love in all its forms truly does find a way to connect, to heal, and to redefine what it means to be a family. My heart, once shattered, was slowly, beautifully becoming whole again, filled with a love that transcended biology, embracing the messy, beautiful truth of our shared existence. Beautiful reality of our unique, interconnected lives.